The smell hits you first. A thick, suffocating blend of rotting garbage, wood smoke, and stale wine. You open your eyes to a dark, narrow alleyway paved with uneven stones. A man in a stained woolen tunic shouts something aggressive in harsh, rapid-fire Latin. He raises a wooden club, his eyes locked entirely on your strange synthetic jacket. You have no idea how it happened, but you are trapped in ancient Rome. Your brain desperately screams for logic, but the crumbling brick buildings and overwhelming stench are undeniably real. This is not the glorious, pristine marble city from the history books. You have arrived during a period of massive crisis, and the Roman Empire is aggressively fracturing. You are completely alone in a terrified metropolis. You possess no social standing, no money, and absolutely no immunity to the rampant ancient diseases festering in the open gutters. To the desperate locals surrounding you, your unblemished skin and bizarre modern clothing do not make you look like a powerful time traveler. They make you a highly valuable target for the bustling slave markets. If you do not quickly camouflage yourself and secure basic physical protection, you will be stripped, beaten, and sold into a lifetime of agonizing manual labor. You must completely abandon your modern identity and actively adapt to the sheer, unadulterated brutality of this ancient reality if you want to survive the night. You scramble backward violently against the damp brick wall, kicking a heavy pile of rotting refuse directly toward the aggressive local to break his line of sight. As he stumbles and curses, you turn and sprint blindly down the winding, pitch-black alleyway. Your modern running shoes give you a massive, life-saving advantage over the slippery, uneven cobblestones. You dive desperately behind a stack of shattered clay amphorae just as a patrol of armed city watchmen marches past, their heavy, iron-studded sandals echoing loudly in the suffocating dark. Your absolute first priority is acquiring a physical disguise. You quickly strip a coarse, scratchy woolen tunic from a nearby wooden drying line, aggressively wrapping it over your modern clothes. The heavy fabric smells like wet sheep and stale sweat, but it instantly transforms you from a bizarre anomaly into an unremarkable, invisible commoner. You step cautiously into a much wider thoroughfare, completely overwhelmed by the chaotic sensory explosion of the ancient capital. You look up and see towering stone monuments dedicated to Sol Invictus, the sun god currently promoted by the desperate state to forcefully unify the diverse, fractured subjects one. You walk past a crowded public bakery where a massive, violently angry mob is actively rioting against heavily armed guards. They are screaming desperately for the cura annone, the vital state-sponsored distribution of free bread, olive oil, salt, and pork that actively keeps the massive, starving population from tearing the city apart one. You quickly realize exactly why they are so furious. You watch a wealthy merchant violently reject a handful of dull coins from a pleading customer. The imperial currency has been catastrophically debased, stripped of its actual guaranteed silver, and rendered entirely worthless by decades of endless war and severe political instability one. Your intense observation of this devastating economic disaster suddenly backfires. A heavy, muscular hand violently grabs the back of your stolen tunic. You are thrown roughly against a massive stone pillar by two enormous, battle-scarred legionaries. They are aggressive military recruiters, desperately sweeping the impoverished streets for warm bodies to throw at the terrifying waves of invading Goths and Vandals threatening Italy, too. You try to desperately beg for mercy, but your strange English words only make them laugh cruelly. To them, the emperor holds the titles of Augustus and Imperator, possessing supreme command, and his absolute demand for fresh troops is unquestionable law too. They slap heavy, rusted iron shackles onto your raw wrists without a single second of hesitation. You are officially property of the Roman military machine, and you are about to be thrust directly into the most terrifying meat grinder of the ancient world. You are violently shoved into a crowded, incredibly filthy holding pen on the outskirts of the massive city walls, entirely surrounded by dozens of terrified, starving conscripts. The towering, heavily fortified stone barriers directly above you are a grim, humiliating admission that the eternal capital is absolutely no longer safe from violent barbarian incursions. The veteran soldiers aggressively guarding the perimeter are heavily armed but deeply, fundamentally restless. Their iron armor is battered, their morale is completely shattered, and they are openly, dangerously cursing the current emperor. You know perfectly well from your modern historical knowledge that the position of the Roman emperor is terrifyingly weak right now. There is absolutely no clear rule or law for succession, meaning every single ambitious general with a loyal army is a highly dangerous potential rival for the throne. The common soldiers must be kept perfectly happy. Being too strict instantly triggers a massive rebellion, while being too permissive invites a violently bloody overthrow. As you sit shivering uncontrollably in the freezing mud, a terrifying new complication violently arises. A severe, devastating outbreak of dysentery is rapidly ripping through the cramped, unsanitary holding pen. Grown men are collapsing in absolute agony, entirely dehydrating in the squalid, horrific conditions. The ancient Roman medics are using entirely useless, heavily flawed remedies, bleeding the sick and completely ignoring the heavily contaminated drinking supply. If you stay in this highly infectious pen, you will absolutely die an agonizing death from a massive bacterial infection long before you ever see a barbarian battlefield. You desperately need to leverage your advanced modern understanding of basic germ theory to instantly prove your immense value. You aggressively flag down a passing, heavily armored centurion using frantic physical hand gestures and drawing crude, desperate diagrams in the wet dirt to communicate that the dark drinking water is lethal. You desperately mimic boiling water over a hot fire. The centurion looks at you with deep, aggressive suspicion, but the severe, crippling loss of military manpower forces his hand. He barks an order, forcing the camp guards to aggressively boil the entire water supply. Within exactly 3 days, the devastating infection rate completely plummets. Your incredibly basic, modern hygiene knowledge performs an absolute, undeniable miracle. You are immediately pulled from the filthy conscript pen and assigned as a highly valued, protected assistant to the commanding general. But your sudden, miraculous rise in social status places you directly in the incredibly lethal crosshairs of violent Roman politics. The general's top lieutenants are actively plotting a bloody, immediate coup against the emperor, and they aggressively demand your absolute, unquestioning loyalty to their treacherous cause. The intense, suffocating political tension finally shatters in the absolute dead of night. The heavy leather flaps of the general's dimly lit command tent are violently thrown open. 4 heavily armored assassins, explicitly paid off by a rival political faction aiming for the imperial throne, charge aggressively inside with massive, unsheathed iron gladius swords. They are here to permanently, violently eliminate the general and completely absorb his highly loyal legions. You are standing right in the absolute center of the assassination, completely unarmored and armed with absolutely nothing but a small, heavy bronze mixing bowl. The lead assassin lunges violently toward the sleeping general with terrifying speed. You react entirely on pure, unadulterated survival instinct and massive adrenaline. You aggressively hurl the heavy bronze bowl directly into the assassin's face, violently shattering his nose and causing his lethal, downward strike to completely miss the general's exposed chest. The general instantly snaps awake, drawing a hidden, razor-sharp dagger from his bedding and violently driving it directly into the attacker's unprotected neck. The entire military camp erupts into absolute deafening chaos as loyalist guards rush the tent, violently subduing the remaining assassins in a massive, incredibly bloody, physical struggle. You stand completely frozen in the horrific, blood-soaked tent, your chest heaving violently as the massive surge of adrenaline slowly drains from your exhausted system. The hardened general stares directly at you with a terrifying, complex mixture of deep gratitude and intense, unyielding calculation. You successfully survived the incredibly brutal political violence of the ancient world tonight, but you are now permanently bound to a highly dangerous, aggressively ambitious military commander. You deeply realize the horrifying, hidden reality of the Roman Empire. It is absolutely not a place of philosophical enlightenment and beautiful, pristine marble statues. It is a massive, incredibly fragile military dictatorship running exclusively on endless blood, total paranoia, and constant betrayal. If you survive this one, hit subscribe, because next week, it gets worse.